Hello, it's Karen Burniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. In the spirit of the new year, I set the theme this month as new. So the team is instructed to try or use something new. So I have a few new things going on in my card. The chief one is that I'm going to convert the action of the frame pull pop-up, which is normally just a single pull from the bottom that you end up with an extra little pop-up inside. And now I'll be converting this pretty easily actually into a 4-panel waterfall card that pulls from the side. You can check out all of our die designs at KarenBurniston.com. Today I'll be using two, the frame pull pop-up and just one word from word set 7. And then to decorate my waterfall card, I'm going to use a stamp set from Visible Image. This is the Cheshire cat. It's new to me, although I did buy it a couple months ago. Okay, so let's get started by making the waterfall. The frame pull pop-up set includes 12 individual dies, and I will grab the 3 that I would normally use to make the frame pull. Those are the same 3 that I'll use for the waterfall. I'm also using brand new cutting pads. It's so fun. Okay, you can use any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer-thin die, and today I'm using a Sizzix Big Shot. Let's start with Smiley Square. So that's the one that has the smiley face at the top and a score line right below it. And you'll fold on that score line as a mountain fold, which means folding away from yourself. And definitely can reinforce that with a bone folder. Okay, now on that piece we want to add 2 more score lines to it, and they should each be 3/8 of an inch apart. So that's going to be 3 tick lines on your scoring board per fold. The 2 new folds that you made will then also become mountain folds. And again, for this technique, it's a great idea to use a bone folder to get a nice crisp fold. So 3 folds in Smiley Square means a 4-panel waterfall. So step 1 is going to be to add the large square to Smiley Square. And I'm using my LINECO neutral pH adhesive in my fine tip bottle. We do sell both of those items on our website. You could just as easily use a strong tape runner or tape. But I want to add that square underneath Smiley Square, starting at that outermost fold. On the pull tab itself, there is a score line underneath the smiley face, and that creates a tapered tab. That tapered tab gets some adhesive, so there's a smiley face on that tab. I know you can't probably see it on the video. But then from behind the piece, you bring the fold line of the tapered tab over the top. The 2 smiley faces line up and you just glue them together. Now because I glued that square on, I've made this piece longer, which means my outer end of my pull tab where the arrow is, it's not going to work the way it normally would, because if you folded it up, it would be too short. So I'm just going to cut away above the arrow and then just cut another pull tab. So from this new pull tab, we can work on the arrow end. And that one has 2 score lines and they both fold in the same direction. What this does is make a very durable little section for pulling, as well as it adds that little arrow detail. So the adhesive goes around the arrow and you fold in the tapered tab first. Now if you wanted to, you could have put a little something behind that arrow first to add some color. What I plan to do, since my cardstock is pretty dark, is just to use a colored pencil through the opening. So now I'm going to fold over once more and glue down. And then I'll just take that white colored pencil in there and just fill in the arrow. Okay, now what this new pull tab is used for is for gluing to the first one so that you can elongate it and make it the right length. So there's quite a bit of overlap in it to get it to sit just outside of the waterfall in the closed position. So I'm just lining it up and gluing it down. I've already previously checked about where it needed to overlap, and then when I close it I realize I am still a little bit short, so I want to pull that up before my glue is set too much and just move it down a little bit. So that's the nice thing about using glue, is if you work quickly you can, fix your errors. Okay, perfect. So now that my whole pull tab is right outside of the square when it's closed. And I don't have to worry about anything that I did there at that seam, because even when it's all the way out, it's not going to show that seam at all. For card size, I chose a thick black cardstock and cut it to A2, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then a piece of pattern paper from my stash that's 4 by 5 1/4. And then for attaching my waterfall to the card, I'm going to choose a location where the main waterfall rectangle is centered. So I'm ignoring the tab itself and just looking at all of the waterfall parts to make sure that that's centered to my liking. Now, one of my favorite ways to attach a waterfall is using something mechanical, like a brad or a staple, because then I don't have to worry about any adhesive coming off as people are pulling. So I love the idea of using a staple, and I'm just doing it in those corners out on the end. I'm going to be covering that up with a square on the front and with a panel on the back. So now with the pull tab all the way out, I can check and see how far in I can put my second set of staples. And I've discovered that it's basically right over the seam from where I glued that smiley square onto that larger square. So that will allow me to still pull all of those panels through. I've die cut 4 of the largest square to be the flipping parts of the waterfall. And I'm going to start in the section that has the staples. So for that one, the square is going to completely cover what's already there. So I can just add my tape runner or glue all over the back of that square and put it on there. So that's the final square that doesn't actually flip, you just land on it. The other 3 squares will each attach to one of the skinny panels. So you just start by adding your glue or tape into one of those skinny panels, and then you want that square to line up with the fold line. And glue is a good choice for this, not only because it's strong, so it's not going to come apart as people open and close the waterfall, but also because you have that chance to redo it. You can pull it off of there if it wasn't particularly straight. Okay, and then I just go on to the next panel. So the adhesive goes in the next skinny panel. I can pull that tab so that I can see where the fold line is, get a good connection, flip it open, make sure I like it, it's nice and straight, and then do the same thing with the final square. And then once that final square is on, my waterfall is now working, it's complete and just needs to be decorated. So my first decoration is one that I wasn't originally planning on, but I got a little sloppy with my glue, and I have some glue stains in different places. Now I know the one on the purple square will get covered, but the ones on the black pattern paper, I've decided just to handle that by sliding in a piece of pattern paper and gluing it to the card as though it were decoration, although technically it's to cover up my glue, just checking first to make sure I don't create a catch point. The frames in the frame pull die set actually have an emboss feature on them if you run it back through with your rubber mat, and then you can get that raised almost wood grain type of texture. And I'm going to use that larger frame on that top square. That will add some decoration as well as cover up those little glue stains. Now I feel like a 4-panel waterfall is perfect for a Cheshire cat disappearing. So I stamped and colored the Cheshire cat and then fussy cut him out and then did various stages of invisibility. Now I just copied the styling from the packaging. Thank you Visible Image for giving me that gorgeous go by, and I used Prismacolor colored pencils. Now I used that same cat stamp 2 more times and cut it out partial, and then there is a stamp that is just the face for the final panel. And as I add my adhesive for that cat, I just need to make sure that I avoid the areas that are going to hang off the edges. And then it's just a matter of flipping through the waterfall and decorating it. And you do have those pieces, those decorator pieces that come in the die set, like this rectangle, that will cut you those perfect pieces to leave that little shadow. So then I'll add some adhesive behind my second cat and just use the first one as a guide to make sure that I get the same position. Having the cats in the same position as you flip through really adds to the illusion. And then same thing with the tail, add the adhesive behind that partial tail and then use the first one as a guide to make sure I get the same position. In the third set of panels, I added pattern paper and then the head of the cat and just tried to eye it so that I got the same position. The frame pull pop-up set has some decorator pieces in it, so it has a die that will cut 2 hearts and 2 dies to cut mirror image matching birds. And I'm just using the same colored pencils to color in the hearts, but leaving a little black outline. Now the birds have a nice stencil feature to be able to highlight the wing and add the eye. So I'll use the die itself as a stencil for that, and then finish out the coloring with those same colored pencils, leaving a little black showing around the edges. So the reason that I chose to style the birds and the hearts this way is to make them tie in a little bit better with stamped and colored imagery. So I find that when I'm using black outline stamps and coloring them, that then when I mix in just die cut paper pieced elements, it kind of has a different look. But by doing this method of using black cardstock and then the same colored pencils to color the images, then I just feel like it ties in a little bit better. And one thing about these videos is I absolutely create and compose these cards as I go. So I haven't tested any of this stuff yet. And now I can see that I've created a catch point with my little piece of pattern paper that was meant to cover my glue, oopsie, because the tail of the cat is hitting it. So I need another solution. So I cut the same black spotted pattern paper and I'll go in and glue that in over the top. It'll make my highlighting pattern paper a little bit skinnier, but it will eliminate the catch point. So now the tail can't catch against that purple paper. And speaking of the tails, as you flip it open, of course, you see the back section of that tail on the white cardstock. So that's where I decided I would put my birds so that it would just fill in that white area a little bit and make it look more intentional. And then the birds are going to stand on the smaller frame from the frame pull die set, which I also ran through with an embossing sandwich to give that texture. And then in my final section, I added the large frame and then the fussy cut cat face. And then I just stamped and fussy cut out all the pieces to the greeting. So it says which way you go depends on where you want to be. And then there's also a stamp that says we're all mad here. So you could send a card like this for almost any occasion, but I did think that welcome would be a good reason to use a card like this. You could be welcoming somebody to your workplace or to your neighborhood or even to your family. You know, this idea, we're all one mad, happy family and welcome. Now the technique itself of altering the frame pull pop-up die set into a waterfall, that's completely generic. So you could make this card in any theme you want. Just swap out the stamps or some different stamps or some dies or however you want to decorate it. You can even add additional panels if you just add more score lines. And it's just a great way to get more out of your investment. So if you own the frame pull pop-up die set, you also own a waterfall die set with just a couple of easy modifications. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com where you can find out information about purchasing these dies as well as links to all my other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.